Hello, this is an assessment of a Bluthner style 7 grand piano that's 190 centimetres long, made in 1898, and it's come in for me to assess to see if we're able to purchase this piano, whether there's too much work to do on it. We love Bluthner style 7 grand pianos. It's one of our very favourites, and right up until 1925 very little difference. Perhaps the older ones sound slightly better in some respects. The casework is superb. If you look at the veneer here, beautiful rosewood, and we French polish these very often. This is very faded rosewood. It's so it's very light coloured. I've mentioned before in other videos how transformed the colour becomes, because rosewood's really a more of a golden reddy colour. This is very light indeed, as you can see. The legs are always much darker. We strip the legs and then try and match them in a lot better than that with the piano, because we feel it's nice to have matching legs if possible. But looking around the whole case, well, it's superb rosewood, and our polisher delights to repolish these. The top of the piano, again, the grain will be much more contrasting, much more interesting when it's stripped and repolished. You can see how beautiful contrast the grain is there already. So certainly a candidate for that, and as you can tell by I'm speaking, I'm enthusiastic. You can see the fade line here. This is very common, and as it's folded back most of the time, then you open it up and find it's much darker there. So this is a much better colour in a way, although we would try and bring out more of a contrast in the grain than that. So the fall also has a beautiful grain, and interesting, there's a similar colour both sides, so it indicates that it's been used and opened and closed a lot. So otherwise it tends to get a lot darker behind here, or conversely, if it's not been used very much, then this is much darker. And it has ivory keys, originals, and I don't think any of them can come off and be stuck back on, as you often get. Just little cracks in the front there. You get that very commonly on Bechsteins and Bluthners, and there really is not much you can do about that. You can obviously change the top, but it won't match very well, and they don't tend to get worse from our experience. So that's not so much of a problem. If you want to be perfect, obviously we can change the ivories and put a new modern finish instead, modern material on instead, which is often done because ivory needs a certificate these days, and also to export ivory to the USA, practically impossible. We have to replace them. The piano came with this piano stool, but it's practically impossible to sell this style of stool. Anyway, it needs repairing. It's come unglued, so that's not something we can really. We obviously want old piano stools, but it doesn't match the piano particularly. If we can manage to get hold of old adjustable piano stools, that's excellent. But it's really difficult to do so. So we often have to supply a modern adjustable piano stool with the piano. The piano also came with some sheet music, and we often get offered sheet music, obviously, and where it's useful, then we try and put it in the charity box that we've got in the front of our shop. And sometimes there's something like this. That's what I learnt on as a child, that course, and there's plenty of those second-hand books available. If someone could sort through, and there's some nice pieces for children to learn on, and quite decent pieces in there, really. If anybody can sort through this for us, I'm mentioning this because we'd love to be able to not have it thrown away, which is people often do, and to have it sorted. Obviously there's some wonderful pieces. I just came across these few here in this pile that I'd like to keep, and there's plenty of copies of Bach's Prelude and Fugues, obviously, and some, if they're very in good condition, that's good. Of course, nowadays people get music on their iPads and so on, but it's quite nice to have the real thing, and this is some jazz riffs I thought were quite interesting as well. I'm not very good at sight reading, so I need to practice my sight reading all the time, and it's quite useful for me to have these, and I'll find a few things that I can sight read, or pieces that I've been looking for as well. So if you're able to spend a lot of time sorting through pieces of sheet music for us, that would be wonderful. We wouldn't obviously do it as a commercial proposition. It's just so that it can get sorted out and is useful to somebody. The inside of the piano is in good condition. It's very dirty, needs a good clean, but the tuning pins are tight. I've tested them. There was one at the bottom here that was quite flat, so I wanted to check that one. And the problem with these original strings, which they are on this Bluthner grand, is they're very close to they're very high tension, very close to their breaking point, and it's very frequent that you, even with the best will in the world, it's very difficult not to break some of these bass strings. So I tentatively, one of them was very flat, that one there, so I tentatively lubricated it, pulled it down and back up, so lubricate this pressure point, and thankfully it didn't break when I pulled it up because it was very flat. It's so common to break them that if we do pitch raise, unfortunately the piano's nearly at concert pitch mostly, but there's a few bass strings that are a bit flat. That one's still left slightly flat. Now it's a very fruity sound in the bass, even though the strings are so old. They have such a high quality of tone, really, but obviously replacing all the strings will improve it, say 10 or 20%. Not that much, because they are such solid sound on the Bluthner Grand. Such a beautiful sound. That could perhaps be twisted. If you twist it one turn in the direction of the coil, that very often improves the string. The frame of the piano is remarkably good. Bechstein frames go all blotchy and mottly. Bluthner stay good like this over a long period of time, and the soundboard is good too. Once it's cleaned up, it'll be very beautiful. There's no moth in the piano. That's something we always check carefully, underneath the keys particularly, and here too you can often see moth eating that. That's very, very common over that period of time for moths to attack pianos, so that's something we look at very carefully. But you can see here the strings, again, extremely good condition, so that's encouraging. Now, taking the action out, you can see that it's the original patent action, as we've shown many times before. You'd expect up to 1925, unless someone's replaced it. And these L-shaped springs, I've just tried regulating one of them. Before I show you that, though, I just want to show you the hammers here. And this is quite common that we find Bluthner's original hammers and never been worked on, not been refaced or anything. So you couldn't really reface this hammer, it's just too far gone. If you refaced it, it would hardly be any felt left. You can see here there's more than a centimetre of the hammer hitting the string, which is very dull. Very well. It's such a nice sounding piano that even when it's dull and like that, it's got a beautifully mellow tone, but obviously you get no clarity of sound out of that at all. And equally bad is the regulation of the piano. Now if I press the key down without any sound coming out, the hammer should travel all the way to the string almost and just set off at the last minute. Now here's that same note, and I'm just pressing it down and it sets off more than 1 centimetre away. If we play it, and the one next to it I've regulated, so if we play them both together, you'll see that the one on the right travels almost to the string before it comes back. So if I play them both together and gently, you can see that the left hand one isn't sounding at all. Let's go louder. Now it does sound as I play a lot louder. So obviously the control on the one that I've done is much better than the control on the left hand one there. That's the B and that's the C. Let's listen to it again. So play them gently. The C sounds, when I'm playing it gently, sounds, and the left hand one doesn't, the B. Play a bit louder. So there's very little control for soft playing. So this is regulated by turning the let off button here, which is at the back of the action. On a normal roller action it's at the front. This makes it a lot smoother to play, and that's why Bluthner designed it like this, I think, because it does give a much smoother feel. And Bluthner actions, they're beautiful. Top musicians are using Bluthner actions in preference to normal actions. Certainly some of my clients are anyway. And you turn this anti-clockwise, obviously, to get it to let off later. So you might be able to see the button moving there. It's not very good on the video, but that allows it to let off later. So they all need turning, but there's general complete regulation to redo on the whole action actually. You can see that someone has had a go at regulating the action. If we look here, you can see that screw here, or bolt, should be turned, should be right up against the wood here, and it's not. Now that really is important to keep that right up against the wood. So somebody's obviously had a go at regulation and that must be kept at all times and never moved. The reason being that if you leave it, and I'm tightening it up, putting it against the wood again, is because if you do take this off, then you need to know exactly how far to screw it back down, and this underneath tells you exactly how far, so you don't, when you put it back on, it's still in regulation. It can make a huge difference if you don't do that. And the one below it also needs doing, so it's really important to keep this nut exactly tight against the wood underneath. So I'm going to do that now, just in case somebody decides to take it off and then realizes the nut is not up against the wood. So that's fine now. So if you take this off now, when you put it back on, it'll come back to the right level, which is so important. And if you don't get that right, you throw the action regulation out completely. Now all of these repetition springs need adjusting as well. There's B, which I haven't done, and C, which I have, and this is middle C, a different one from before. So you can see the right hand one is a lot freer. I did also have to lubricate it here, and they all need lubricating. And by the way, the lubrication needs doing here. They're very tight indeed, so that needs doing. If we lift the keys up, they don't fall down at all, and they should fall down as they would on a new piano. But the major work on the piano is obviously replacing the hammers, and that needs doing before any regulation. And we obviously brand new hammers. They're very soft anyway. Not only do they sound mellow because there's too much hitting the string, but they're very soft hammers. So we would have to change them in order to make the tone as it should be. So that's a big job, because then you have to re-regulate the whole piano and re-weight the keyboard too. I noticed they're also checking very high and wearing out the back check. As you can see, that hammer's digging into the back check there. This is the back check here, and that's very easy, unscrewed and replaced. It probably doesn't have to be changed, but it's something that's not that difficult to do. It should be checking a lot further down like this, so then it's not going to wear the back check out. There's a hammer broken at the bottom here. Someone pulled it out and obviously had their finger on the key, or that's probably what happened. So the hammer was too high and broke off when it was pulled out. And someone's tried to stick it back on with sellotape and things. I don't know exactly what they stuck it with. It needs splicing normally, or you could replace the whole of this, or it's just as good to splice it here and then wind it with cotton to hold the splice. And you don't have to take the cotton off really, but sometimes people take the cotton off, and the splice holds very well if you've used very strong glue. I also noticed lead oxide in the key bed here. Clearly lots of the keys are going to need treatment for the lead, and sometimes we very often have to change the leads, unfortunately. There's a couple of the keys where you see the lead oxidized. By the way, if you touch lead oxide, don't put it in your mouth, finger in your mouth, because it's quite poisonous. So to get the piano to playable condition and acceptable standard, the very least we need to do is replace the hammers and fully regulate. I need to sort out the keys as well, the oxidization, and repair the broken shank obviously. And it can be French polished, so obviously we want to make the piano as economical as possible, and French polishing takes 70 hours, so it adds a lot of cost to the piano. Now we obviously can fully redo the whole piano, as we have in this case here with this piano. This is a client's piano that we've done for them, and obviously black, so it's a different type of finish on the outside, but about the same length of time it takes, a little bit less than French polishing, and you can see the inside is absolutely immaculate. It's a slightly later one, although it's actually interestingly still a patent action piano, but you can see it looks like a brand new piano, and it sounds beautiful too. We hear the difference in tone with the new hammers on the other piano, so that's the one that needs new hammers. Here's what new hammers sound like. It's a much cleaner, crisper sound, and many more harmonics being brought out. Slightly out of tune because it's just been restrung and the strings are settling down. So that's a Bluthner style 7 grand piano, 190 centimetres long, made in 98, and just assessing it to see if there's too much work for us to make it economical to restore and resell. We really do love to do them, but obviously you can tell actually I'm trying to make a noise out of these and they're not working because I'm not pressing them hard enough. It's terribly out of regulation. That one we regulated and it can get working when it's played gently, and this one doesn't work at all when you've played gently. So it's remarkable that a piano's been around for so long and never been regulated like that. So obviously it's something we're frequently having to do. It's not uncommon, and not uncommon to find the hammers so worn. So I was just saying that is there too much work for us to do to be able to sell this piano and make enough money on it to continue the business? So that's always the issue. If you're interested in the piano and want to encourage us to redo it, please do let us know. I'm sure we'll end up trying to take it on, as we usually do, but it's very difficult to do to make a profit. And if we repolish the piano too, that puts the price up again. So if you are interested, please do write to us, info@robertspianos.com, and let us know what your thoughts are. See, Bluthner sounds so beautiful even when they're very mellow like this, but it just isn't playing properly either at the moment. So there's no doubt that we'd have to do work on it. I'm playing it at normal pressure here and not getting any sound out of it. Stay remarkably in tune. They're such stable pianos that even after probably a long time since it's been tuned, it's still remarkably well in tune. Thank you very much for listening.